On April 5, 1945, Hitler committed suicide. 24 days before, Dachau concentration camp received a Hitler warrant conveyed by the Gestapo headquarters in Berlin to execute a special prisoner codenamed L. This person's real name is George Elsel, and he is an ordinary carpenter. In the late 1930s, he planned and carried out an assassination of Hitler and others alone, which changed history a little bit. Hitler never ruthlessly packs up the people who want to assassinate him, and it's just night. Why is Elsel the exception? He was imprisoned until the empire was almost over before he was executed? Hello everyone, I am Fei Xiang. Before the 15th, I will continue to wish the audience a happy new year. During Hitler's reign, he suffered more than 40 assassinations, but not many of them were truly threatening. The one that Elsel did, the lone wolf, can be said to be the closest success. In 1903, Elsel was born in Württemberg, the German Empire. My father was drunk in domestic violence, and his family was not easy. Elsel was 16 years old and became a woodworking apprentice. In the past 10 years, he worked in furniture factories, aircraft factories, watch factories, and other places. He was a skilled carpenter and had some research on machinery. Like most of us, although Elsel lives a poor life, he loves life and cannot stand social injustice. In the late 1920s and early 1930s, in the chaos caused by the world economic crisis, he felt extremely strong about the tragic experiences of the workers and joined the left-wing Woodworking Federation and the Red Front under the German Communist Party. Although he believed that the German Communist Party was the best defender of the workers' interests, he rarely participated in their activities. With this economic crisis, Hitler reached the top of Germany's power and conquered countless people with passionate speeches. But Elsel was very annoyed. He thought this man was too crazy and wanted to bring Germany into a big pit. He refused to perform Nazi rituals and privately called him Gypsy. At first Elsel didn't think about assassination. From 1937 to 1938, he worked in a military instrument factory and witnessed the German army stepping up its armed forces in preparation for a large-scale war. At the same time, the frequent rallies and military parades of the Nazis also disgusted him. At the end of September 1938, Britain and France signed the Munich Agreement with Germany and Italy without the participation of the Czech Republic, giving the Czech Sudetenland region to Germany in exchange for Hitler not to go to war. This is obviously just a wishful compromise. Elsel realized that the war was imminent and the civilians in war were the most tragic, so he decided to stop the war. How to stop it? Elsel believes that the Nazi leaders must be taken away in one fell swoop, and the former site of the beer hall coup in Munich, the Burgblau-Keller Beer Hall, is an ideal place to achieve this goal. On November 8, 1923, Hitler and his followers launched a coup here, trying to seize power, but despite the failure, it pushed Hitler to the German political stage. Since then, every day, Nazi senior officials would gather here to commemorate Hitler's coming to power. The scale is getting bigger and bigger, and they would give speeches for 2 hours each time. To find out the best way to assassinate, Elsel went to Munich on November 8, 1938. After the Nazi members ended in the evening, he entered the Burgblau-Keller Beer Hall to take a closer look. After several weeks of thinking, he decided to hide the explosives in the pillar directly behind the podium, detonate regularly, and destroy the Nazi high-ranking officials. The following year, Elsel made careful and complicated preparations alone. He worked in a quarry for 2 months and collected more than 100 blasting bombs and detonators one after another. With a pair of skilled hands, he used watch movements and auto parts to create a time bomb he called the Hell Machine, and even thoughtfully installed sound insulation materials. On September 1, 1939, Germany blitzed Poland. On the day of World War II, Elsel rented a house near the Burgblau-Keller Beer Hall. In the next 2 months, he spent half of his time looking for opportunities to sneak into the beer hall every night, and waited until the second half of the night to dig holes and load bombs. The beer hall security was lax and Elsel went well. In the early morning of November 6, he set the bomb launch time to 9:20 p.m. on the 8th. In theory, Hitler was giving speeches in a swift manner, and his confidants were around him. On the evening of the 7th, Elsel entered the beer hall for the last time to ensure that the installation was foolproof. On the morning of the 8th, he left Munich and prepared to cross the border to flee to Switzerland. In fact, Hitler originally cancelled the beer hall speech and focused on planning the next war against France, but finally decided to attend. He was accompanied by Himmler, Goebbels, Heydrich, and other core Nazi leaders. If Elsel's plan succeeds, it will be a destruction of the whole country. Unfortunately, man's calculations are not as good as God's calculations. On that day, the weather forecast was incorrect. Hitler was worried that he would not be able to fly back to Berlin the next morning, so he decided to take a private train back that night. The latest departure time of Munich railway station is 9:30, so the party starts half an hour in advance, and Hitler's speech was also compressed from 2 hours to 1 hour. At 9:07 p.m., Hitler finished his speech and left with his entourage. 13 minutes later, the bomb exploded, 8 people around the podium were killed and 62 were injured. Except for an innocent waitress, the rest of the deceased were Nazi officials. Elsel is only 13 minutes away from changing history. Hitler learned of the explosion on the train and said, "People must be resentful." But soon he realized that this was an excellent opportunity and claimed that he left the beer hall earlier than usual, which proved that God hoped he would achieve it. Target. Half an hour before the explosion, Elsel was captured by the German army 25 meters away from the Derek border. A large number of notes, sketches, and beer hall postcards were found on him, plus the German commune badges. Elsel brought these things with him in the hope that he would use it to prove that he had committed assassination after crossing the border and avoid being deported. The result became evidence of his crime. At 11 o'clock that night, he was handed over to the Gestapo for escorting to Munich. At that time, no one believed that a Carpenter could do such a big deal. On the evening of the 9th, the German army caught 2 British agents near the Dutch city of Venlo on the German-Holland border. The matter was linked to the explosion. Goebbels started the propaganda machine, saying that the assassination was planned by London. Even if Alcé admits that it was his own work. Still described as a toolman. After being tortured at the Gestapo headquarters, Alcé is a special prisoner. He was detained in Sachsenhausen concentration camp and then transferred to Dachau concentration camp. Hitler intended to judge him after the war ended. Alcé showed his selected man attitude. But the steps are too big. Tear to the point where it shouldn't be pulled. As the situation takes a sharp turn for the worse. April 1945. Hitler ordered the execution of Alcé. On the 9th, 42-year-old Alcé was shot in Dachau concentration camp and his body was burned to ashes. 20 days later, the US military liberated Dachau, and 10 more days later, Germany surrendered unconditionally, and the European war came to an end. For a long time after the war, Alcé did not receive the memorial it deserved. Many people believe that the beer hall bombing is the same as the congressional arson. It was directed and performed by the Nazis, intending to strengthen what Hitler called God's will and myth. Until the late 1960s. After historians studied the Gestapo archives, it was confirmed that Alcé had nothing to do with the Nazis. And one person completed the assassination. Now, there are several monuments named after Alcé in Germany. More than 60 streets and squares. And the Courage Award awarded every 2 years. In this way, I commemorate this lonely brave man who went against the flow. That's all today. Friends who like it, please follow me. See you next time.